like to welcome everyone tonight to our Learning Together. We're looking at issues around prevention of sexual exploitation, abuse and harassment. So a great evening ahead. We have an agenda. We've prayed and welcomed people. The event's being recorded. Rachel's going to give us an overview of preventing sexual exploitation, abuse and harassment. Tamara's going to talk about how in HealthServe we're making progress, learning as we're going. Rosemary's going to talk about the impact of this on the lives of people. We're then going to go into small groups where we'll be asking how, in your setting, how far have you been able to go with preventing sexual exploitation, abuse and harassment. Then we'll come back to the bigger group. And then the second task will be what could be the next steps in your setting you could take to strengthen this area. Again, we'll come back to report and then we'll sum up. Okay. So with that, I'd like to hand over to the HealthServe Australia Program Officer. Oh, no, sorry, to Rachel, the HealthServe Australia board member with expertise in this area.
Hi, everybody. How are you going? Thank you all for coming. So my name's Rachel and I have worked in a number of not-for-profit organisations as a camps coordinator for Scripture Union, and I currently work in the Children's and Families Ministry for the Melbourne Diocese for an Anglican church. And child safety, or this area of policy, is massive and important and takes up a lot of my time in administration. And takes a lot of time in terms of training our volunteers to make sure that they understand who vulnerable people are, how power and institutions can create places where sexual exploitation, abuse and harassment can happen, and how as Christians we need to make sure we don't allow that to happen. So that's what a lot of my time is taken up with in my work and in my previous roles as well. So I thought, I am also a board member for HealthServe and have been part of HealthServe since about 2012, I think it is. So HealthServe is kind of governed, or we're accountable to, an organisation called the Australian Council for International Development, and they set principles, quality principles that we are to adhere to in order to be able to provide international development and the projects and support the projects that you are a part of with HealthServe. There are 9 principles, quality principles, that HealthServe Australia must meet and advance and adhere to, where it's a self-regulatory organisation. So we have to self-regulate that is happening within HealthServe Australia. There are also checks that might happen. We might get audited by ACFID, and if we aren't meeting those requirements, then we can lose our ACFID, ACFID, I guess, accreditation, and then that puts HealthServe at jeopardy as well. These principles are regularly reviewed by ACFID, and regularly reviewed by HealthServe. And it's a phenomenal job. Michael spends a lot of time doing it. The board is there to support him, and we help him where we can. So one of the first principles is this area that we're talking about tonight: rights, protection, and inclusion. So we recognise that it's a human right for people to receive healthcare, receive, and be free from sexual exploitation, abuse, and harassment. We are, there's lots of dingings, isn't it? We are to make sure that this is an area that we absolutely must adhere to, and this extends to our partners. And that would be, you'd be aware of that through the MOUs that you are required to sign, and it must include child safeguarding and a few other areas that we have to adhere to we are also seen as an organisation to be advancing in this area and not just adhering to, and that's why we're having this conversation today. So you can see down here as part of the quality principle number 1 that there are 5 parts to it. That we as an organisation respect and protect human rights. We respect and respond to the needs, rights, inclusions of those who are vulnerable and those affected by marginalisation and exclusion. We support people affected by crisis. We advance the safeguarding of children, and we advance the safeguarding of those who are vulnerable to sexual exploitation and abuse. So I guess tonight we're recognising that this area is really important. Firstly, that it's an area that we need to protect our organisations and our projects from. Excuse me. And that it's not just protecting our organisation, but we actually want to protect the people from, protect vulnerable people as well. And not just because we are interested in assisting people, but because that's also what Christ wants us to do as well. And that's part of being part of being Christian and part of being part of a Christian organisation as well. So it's a serious area. It's a serious area in Australia. It's a serious area globally. We recognise it's a global issue and not just one that's specific to Australia or not just one that's specific to our particular country. It's an issue that sadly is a human issue. And yeah, so we need to make sure we are adhering to these principles and advancing in this area. I'll hand you back over to Michael.
Thank you, Rachel, for pointing out the contexts in which we move, both in our country and I know in your countries. There will be movement towards strengthening this area, particularly protecting those that are vulnerable, women and children particularly. This is a very important area. Our next presenter tonight is our HealthServe Australia Program Officer, Tamara. So if you could stop sharing, Rachel, and we'll head to Tamara. Tamara, you're most welcome.
Perfect. I will just try and share my screen as well. So HealthServe Australia obviously does have our own policy in alignment with ACFID, and as a partner, part of being a partner and our requirements from you that you commit to when you sign the memorandum of agreement is that you are aware of our policies and that you're willing to comply with them. And just so you do know, by heading to our website, all of our policies and procedures are available all down here. So you can find which ones are relevant. But just so you know, this is our policy on preventing sexual exploitation and abuse. And I'm not going to read through it all, but we did just want to highlight, as a partner, this is something that you're agreeing to abide by. We hope that this, I guess, provokes you to look deeper at your own organizations and how you could implement your own policy. And you're more than welcome to take ours and modify it to make it contextual to your specific country. But yes, at the very least, you're agreeing to abide by ours. So just the purpose of this policy is to ensure that all people who participate in and benefit from HealthServe's programs and activities are protected, and to assist in identifying and dealing fully with any suspicious or allegations of sexual exploitation, abuse, or harassment. So we do take a survivor-centered approach, which Michael will talk more about later. And the next section is around partnering organisations and our expectations. So I guess this is key for you all to continually look over and review at a later time. And also just the process in which we handle feedback and complaints, reporting is really important. So it is quite a practical tool as well. And this is more just our approach and our biblical foundations of where and why and how it's been developed. And then just at the very bottom, we've got definitions and some further resources if you'd like to have a look for your own benefit. But yeah, I just wanted to simply point that out, highlight where it is, how to access it, and make sure you're all aware that that is, yeah, I guess our standard that you've committed to.
Tamara, thank you very much. Now, I'm very delighted to be able to welcome Dr. Rosemary Isaacs, who has got a long history of working as a medical practitioner in assisting people who experienced sexual assault, abuse and harassment. Rosemary, yes.
Well, I'm very pleased as a HealthServe supporter to see the excellent policies that have been worked through, and I know that it's difficult to put them into practice in all environments, including in Australia. My experience and expertise is not so much in policies, but in responding to people who've experienced these sort of assaults. And I thought I'd just say briefly that I just remind you that although the World Health Organization regards the sexual assault of women and sexual abuse of women as a very significant health issue because of the effects, not just on sexual health, but on mental health and on women's then ability to look after themselves and to their economic future and so on, that there are just so many people impacted, and we know. Recently, I've been working in aged care, and I've had a couple of patients with early dementia who have started telling things to their family that they'd managed to keep suppressed for 50 or 60 years. So their adult children in their 40s or 50s say, I never knew that happened to my mother, or in some cases, my father. And often those things are not just domestic violence, but sexual assault or rape as a teenager and things like that. And these adult children in their 40s and 50s look back and say, I can see that of how that affected our whole family lives. This thing my mother's managed to keep hidden from me, this rape or whatever happened to her as a teenager or as a child, all these years, and now she can't keep it hidden. So I thought I'd just say the simplest thing if you're teaching any students or anybody, people in your admin, to respond to anybody who's disclosing whether it's exploitation or abuse or sexual assault or anything like that, to say the first thing is to say to the person, whether they're adult or a child, to indicate that you're pleased that they told you. Because a lot of us, of course, have a sinking feeling, we're worried, we may look distressed or we might be busy, but we want to indicate it's a good thing that they told us because we might be the first person they told. I'm pleased you told me. That must have been difficult, or it might have been difficult to tell me, but it's good that you told me. And the next thing is, and I know this is very simple and most of you know it, but I just want to say the next thing is to indicate that it wasn't their fault. Whatever they may have done that they may think contributed to it or led it up, nobody deserves to be treated like that. Nobody deserves sexual exploitation, sexual abuse. So you're pleased they told you. Nobody deserves that. And the third thing is there some way we can help? Now, we can't always help as much as we'd like to help, but one of the things we're there to focus on for survivors is to help in whatever way we can and to build up those resources or to find someone who can help them. And I think that message can sometimes be given quite briefly, so that somebody who, without a lot of expertise in the area, can give that simple message and then maybe refer on or get help from someone who's got more knowledge or more time or more skills in helping. And I'd encourage you to put that simple 3-step message across. It's good they spoke up, and don't forget it might be the first time they've spoken up about it in 20 years, or you might be the first person they've told. So it's good they spoke up. No one deserves sexual abuse or sexual harassment, whatever the thing is. And what can we do, or how can we help? Is there a way we can help in either prevention or recovery or the healing from this whole situation? And I'm really looking forward to the discussion and hearing what's happening in different places and in different projects.
Yes, so thank you very much, Rosemary. Yes, I think we're already starting to learn a lot. I would just share from my general medical practice that I see many people whose lives have been damaged by sexual exploitation, abuse and harassment. I see it in their mental health issues. They might be anxious or depressed. I see it in people using different recreational substances to try and escape the memories. They might have a particular drug dependency issue from that. I also see it in obviously broken relationships, but I also see it in chronic pain. So many of my people with chronic pain have got that chronic pain, and there's a very strong association with earlier life experiences of sexual exploitation, assault, abuse, and harassment. So our society carries an enormous burden from practices that we need to challenge, and that's very much the kingdom values that we're putting forward. And we're also emphasising, as Tamara said, a survivor-centred approach. As Rosemary indicated, it's very important to affirm the person that is brave enough to disclose that this difficult thing has happened to them. There needs to be a focus on providing protection and assistance, addressing their immediate safety needs, particularly if they're needing to return to some kind of potentially unsafe situation, and providing them appropriate and immediate, where appropriate, health and psychological needs, and medical help if there's a risk of transmission of disease. And our organisations and we in Australia are working in our group to try and put in place our policies and our practices to minimise these events occurring, but also to have a response in place if in fact they do sadly occur. So our next opportunity for the evening is to join small groups. We'll form 2 small groups. The task, and we're going to have a 15-minute opportunity. We'd ask your group to appoint a reporter who will come back to the bigger group. And the task for the first group is to reflect on, in your setting, what have you currently got in place to address sexual exploitation, assault and harassment. That might be a policy, it might be a complaint mechanism, it might be an experience that you've had that your organisation has learned from, or you might be really at an early time and this is just a new topic to engage in. So we're going to break into 2 groups, and I'm going to open those groups now.